I need a boyfriend by tomorrow. Mason Reed heard the sentence over the hiss of steamed milk and the quiet clatter of cups at Linden and Pine, a small cafe tucked along a rainy street in Seattle. He had been sitting at his usual corner table, pretending to study an investment report while watching pedestrians hurry beneath umbrellas. At 34, Mason controlled a private investment fund worth more money than most people could imagine. His calendar was arranged months ahead. His suits were handmade. His assistants solved problems before he noticed them. And he was profoundly bored. Then Maya Bennett lowered her voice behind the counter and changed his afternoon. No, Zoe, you don't understand. Catherine's wedding is tomorrow. Aunt Judith thinks I've been dating someone for months. Mason looked down at his tablet, though he was no longer reading. Maya had served him espresso several times. She wore her dark hair twisted into a careless bun and moved with the speed of someone who worked too many shifts. Mason had noticed that she remembered regular customers' orders, slipped cookies to tired children, and never complained when coworkers disappeared during rush hour. Now, panic sharpened her voice. The guy who promised to help canceled. He says he has a business trip. Tomorrow. Convenient, right? She listened, then groaned. I cannot arrive alone. Aunt Judith will spend the whole reception asking why I'm still single, why I don't own a house, and whether there's something wrong with me. Mason almost smiled. He understood hostile negotiations. Family interrogations sounded worse. Maya leaned against the wall. I already told everyone he's successful and dependable. I said we met at a charity dinner. I need someone tall, reasonably presentable, and capable of pretending he likes me. Mason slowly placed his tablet on the table. For years, people had approached him wanting investment, introductions, influence, employment, donations, or access. Nobody had ever unknowingly presented him with something this absurd, a real problem that money alone could not solve. When Maya ended the call, she returned to work with a professional smile that failed to hide her anxiety. Mason considered his weekend. A financial review, golf, dinner with people who would discuss markets while pretending not to watch one another's watches. Then he imagined attending a vineyard wedding with a desperate waitress and convincing an opinionated aunt that they were deeply committed. For the first time all week, he felt awake. He walked to the counter. Maya looked up. Another espresso? No, I have a proposal. Her expression immediately became cautious. I overheard your conversation. Color rose into her face. That was private. I know. I apologize. But you need a boyfriend by tomorrow. Her embarrassment became irritation. Sir, this isn't funny. I'm not joking. He offered his hand. Mason Reed. She stared at it before shaking. Maya Bennett. I'm available tomorrow. I'm tall. I own several suits. I can behave appropriately at formal events. And I'm extremely experienced at pretending to enjoy conversations. Maya blinked. You're offering to pretend to be my boyfriend. Your serious boyfriend. Possibly your future fiancé, depending on how dangerous Aunt Judith is. From behind the espresso machine, Noah, another server, suddenly became fascinated by polishing the same cup repeatedly. Maya folded her arms. Why? Because my life has become painfully predictable. That might be the worst reason I've ever heard. It's also the truth. She studied him carefully. He looked expensive, calm, and completely insane. You could be dangerous. So could Aunt Judith. Maya almost laughed despite herself. Mason continued. I'll compensate you for the weekend. She stiffened. I'm not selling anything. Neither am I. You'll miss work and spend your weekend participating in a ridiculous arrangement that benefits both of us. I would pay you the equivalent of several months of cafe wages. Her expression changed. Mason had observed enough people discussing money to recognize the difference between greed and relief. Maya's eyes did not brighten with desire. They softened with calculation. Rent. Bills. Something else. My younger brother needs tutoring, she said quietly. He's falling behind in school. Then use the money for him. She looked at him for several long seconds. One condition. Name it. I need to understand the man I'm supposedly dating. Mason smiled. That was exactly the kind of condition nobody in his professional life ever demanded. Fair. Maya removed her apron. My shift ends soon. Too late. We have less than a day to manufacture a believable relationship. She grabbed her bag. Noah stared at them. Maya pointed at him. You heard nothing. Absolutely nothing, Noah said, still polishing the cup. Except possibly the beginning of the greatest story of my life. Outside, Mason opened the passenger door of a dark sedan. Maya stopped. You drive that? I told you I was dependable. That car says something beyond dependable. Then tomorrow, Mason replied, we'll make sure Aunt Judith only notices the dependable part. For the first time since receiving the cancellation call, Maya laughed. And for the first time in years, Mason forgot to check his phone. Their emergency planning session began before they left downtown Seattle. How did we meet? Mason asked. At a charity dinner. Which charity? I never invented that part. Dangerous. Maya frowned. You're taking this disturbingly seriously. If we lie badly, we fail. We're not invading a country. Your aunt sounds more difficult. Maya reluctantly smiled. They decided they had met through mutual friends at a fundraiser supporting youth education. Mason would be an attorney specializing in corporate acquisitions. He actually understood acquisitions, so that part would survive questioning. His age remained 34. They had supposedly been dating for 2 months. Their relationship was intense but sensible, wording Maya insisted Aunt Judith would appreciate. Mason entered everything into his phone. Maya stared. You're taking notes? I don't lose negotiations because someone forgets details. My aunt is not a negotiation. That remains unproven. Their next stop was an upscale shopping district. Maya looked through the window of an elegant boutique and immediately shook her head. No. You need something appropriate. I own a dress. What kind? Black. Bought on sale a couple of years ago. Mason looked concerned. What? A serious corporate attorney does not bring his supposedly beloved girlfriend to a summer vineyard wedding dressed for a tax audit. My dress is fine. This is operational credibility. Normal people call that shopping. Inside, Maya protested at nearly every price tag. Mason ignored the numbers and asked the sales associate for something elegant without looking theatrical. Eventually, Maya emerged wearing a long blue-gray dress. Mason stopped talking. For the first time since proposing the scheme, his expression lost its amused calculation. Maya noticed. Well? He recovered. Excellent. That sounded surprisingly human. Don't become confident. We still need shoes. She rolled her eyes. By evening, they reached Maya's modest apartment in an older building near Green Lake. Mason removed his jacket and sat at her kitchen table while she made tea. The contrast made Maya laugh. What? You look like somebody accidentally dropped a board meeting into my kitchen. Mason opened his tablet. We need personal information. Such as? Favorite food. Grilled cheese. He looked disappointed. What? I was hoping for something useful. It is useful. You love grilled cheese too. I do? You do now. They continued. Favorite movies. Childhood memories. Annoying habits. Imaginary arguments. Maya decided Mason always arrived too early. Mason decided Maya left coffee cups everywhere. Their fictional disagreement involved choosing furniture for the house they were supposedly considering outside Seattle. Then Mason asked, Why do I love you? Maya nearly dropped her mug. We don't need that. We absolutely do. Your aunt will ask. She thought. Say I make your life less serious. Mason's expression shifted. That may be too believable. Maya looked at him. He glanced down. Why do you love me? I don't. Again, credibility. She considered him. Because you pay attention. Mason frowned slightly. You noticed I needed help. You noticed my brother matters to me. You noticed I was embarrassed instead of making fun of me. That is dangerously sincere. Then, Aunt Judith will believe it. They practiced gestures next. Holding hands. A hand at the upper back. Standing close without looking uncomfortable. No kissing, Maya said immediately. Agreed. Not even for dramatic effect. I manage investment funds, Maya. I can respect contractual boundaries. You suggested pretending to be a stranger's boyfriend after overhearing her phone call. Unusual circumstances. When midnight approached, Maya looked toward her small sofa. You're not sleeping here. I assumed not. Mason made a call. Less than an hour later, a driver delivered a compact camping cot and fresh bedding. Maya stared. You own an emergency bed? My staff can locate almost anything. That is terrifying. It's efficient. Before going to her bedroom, Maya paused. Mason? Yes? Why are you really doing this? He looked around her tiny apartment, at the stack of bills beside the refrigerator, the second-hand furniture, and the handwritten school schedule belonging to her brother. Then he answered more quietly than before. I think I've spent too many years solving expensive problems. And mine? Yours matters to somebody. She nodded and closed her bedroom door. Long after the apartment became quiet, Mason remained awake. For years he had measured successful days in percentages, agreements, and returns. Yet the thing occupying his mind was whether he remembered that Maya hated olives and loved old mystery movies. It was ridiculous, and somehow important. The wedding was held the next afternoon at a vineyard outside Woodinville, where rows of grapevines rolled across green hills beneath a clear summer sky. Maya sat rigidly beside Mason during the drive. You're nervous, he said. My entire extended family is waiting to examine you like a used car. I've survived congressional hearings. You haven't survived Aunt Judith. Mason nodded thoughtfully. Fair point. Before leaving the car, he looked at her. Remember our story. Charity dinner, 2 months, corporate attorney. You love grilled cheese. I object to the last fact. Too late. And controlled physical contact. Maya laughed nervously. Controlled physical contact. That still sounds like something from an employee handbook. They walked toward the reception lawn together. Maya spotted Aunt Judith almost instantly. She was standing beside several relatives in a lavender dress, scanning arriving guests with the concentration of an airport security officer. There. Mason followed her gaze. That's Judith? Yes. She looks formidable. I warned you. Judith approached before they had traveled halfway across the lawn. Maya. Her eyes immediately moved to Mason. So this must be the famous attorney. Mason offered his hand. Mason Reed, I've heard a great deal about you. Judith's expression suggested that she considered this appropriate. And I've heard about you. Maya slipped her arm through Mason's. Judith noticed everything. The tailored suit, the polished shoes, the understated watch, the way Mason turned slightly toward Maya whenever she spoke. So, Judith began, Maya tells us you met at some charity event. Mason answered smoothly. A fundraiser supporting education programs for children who need academic assistance. Maya nearly stopped breathing. He had incorporated her brother without warning. And you noticed Maya there? Immediately. Judith raised an eyebrow. Why? Mason glanced at Maya. Everyone else was trying very hard to appear important. Maya was helping a server pick up broken glasses. Maya knew this had never happened. Yet the sentiment felt oddly accurate. She seemed real. Judith softened slightly. Then Uncle Ethan arrived. He was broad-shouldered, cheerful, and already carrying a drink. "So you're Maya's mystery man. Mason. Attorney? Corporate transactions. You own a place?" Maya nearly groaned. Mason remained calm. "I have an apartment in Seattle. Maya and I have discussed finding a house eventually." Judith brightened. "A house?" Maya jumped in. "We're still arguing about furniture." Mason nodded solemnly. "She favors beautiful things. I favor things capable of surviving actual use." "That is not what we agreed," Maya whispered. It sounded natural. Ethan laughed. "I like him." The ceremony passed peacefully. At the reception, however, the interrogation continued. Judith asked about Mason's parents. He explained that they spent much of their time abroad. She asked whether he cooked. He admitted he was terrible. Maya added that he compensated by ordering unnecessarily expensive food. Judith seemed delighted that they possessed flaws. During dinner, Mason presented Catherine and Frank with a framed work by a young Pacific Northwest artist, rather than an envelope. Judith examined it suspiciously. "Is this valuable?" "The important thing is that it may become meaningful," Mason replied. "Investing in the future." That phrase pleased her enormously. Later, she cornered them beside the dance floor. "When are you two getting married?" Maya froze. They had planned for dozens of questions. "Not that one." Mason did not hesitate. "When Maya is ready." Judith blinked. "I have no intention of making her life another deadline. We want something lasting, not something rushed because people expect it." His hand closed gently over Maya's. She looked at him. That answer had not been rehearsed. For several seconds, Maya forgot they were pretending. Judith sighed approvingly. A man with patience. Finally. When she walked away, Maya whispered, "That was good." Mason looked toward her. "I meant it." Before she could respond, music filled the room. Mason held out his hand. "Dance." "I'm terrible." "I noticed." "You noticed. You dance while cleaning tables." Maya stared at him in horror. "You've seen that?" "Unfortunately." She laughed and followed him onto the floor. He guided her through simple steps, never trying to impress anyone. And somewhere between the music and the laughter, their carefully controlled performance became dangerously easy. The wedding grew louder as evening deepened. Mason survived Ethan's questions about property, markets, and whether corporate lawyers knew anything about real work. When Ethan jokingly challenged him to help move an empty barrel near the service area, Mason removed his jacket and carried it without complaint. Ethan slapped him on the shoulder. "Okay, you can stay." Maya laughed harder than she had in months. Later, during a crowded dance, her new shoe slipped. She stumbled. Mason caught her immediately. "Careful." His concern sounded different from the polished voice he had used with her relatives. Maya looked down. Her shoe lay behind them. Before she could bend, Mason retrieved it and knelt long enough to help her put it back on. Judith witnessed the entire thing. Her eyes became suspiciously bright. "A successful man with manners," she whispered to another relative. "Rare." Maya wanted to disappear. Instead, she found herself watching Mason. This strange man had agreed to lie for her because he was bored. Yet everything he did when nobody required him to perform seemed kinder than the performance itself. Near midnight, they escaped outside. Maya removed her shoes and sat on a wooden bench overlooking the dark vineyard. Mason loosened his tie. "That," he said, "was considerably harder than managing a merger. You looked like you were enjoying yourself." "I was." "Why?" He looked toward the reception hall. "Because everything mattered." Maya frowned. "Millions of dollars matter. Not in the same way." He leaned back. "A financial loss becomes a number on a report. Your aunt approving of me should mean absolutely nothing to my life. Yet when she nearly cried because I helped you with your shoe, it felt more real than most victories I've had this year. Maya became quiet. Then she asked the question she had been avoiding. When you told her I was real, was that part of the story? Mason looked at her. No. The answer came too quickly to be strategic. In my world, he continued, people are constantly deciding what version of themselves might be useful to me. You don't do that. I'm literally pretending to be your girlfriend. Because I asked you to. And because you're paying me. Yes. She appreciated that he did not romanticize her financial reality. Mason continued. You worry about your brother. You work too much. You complain when coffee is bad. You think expensive art sometimes looks ridiculous. You're not trying to become someone else because I have money. Maya smiled. That might be the strangest compliment I've received. It's the most sincere one I've given recently. Music erupted again inside. Maya sighed. We should return. There's another tradition first. She explained the bridal bouquet toss. Mason immediately treated it like a tactical problem. If catching it creates additional pressure, stand near the back. You cannot calculate a flying bouquet. I manage uncertainty professionally. You are impossible. When the unmarried guests gathered, Judith watched eagerly from the side. Catherine turned away and threw the bouquet. It arced directly toward Maya. Mason reacted instinctively. He stepped between her and the flowers, pulling Maya sideways as though protecting her from a falling object. The bouquet sailed over them and landed in Zoe's arms. Zoe stared down in horror. Across the room, Judith found a new target. Maya nearly collapsed laughing. Mason Reed, did you just defend me from flowers? Successful risk mitigation. We should leave before you start managing the cake. They made their farewells. Judith hugged Maya and whispered, You did well. The words bothered Maya more than she expected. As if choosing the right man were an achievement. As if her life had become respectable only because Mason stood beside her. In the car heading back to Seattle, she remained silent. Finally, Mason said, Something changed. Maya looked out the window. My aunt thinks my life is successful now. Isn't that what you wanted? I thought so. She turned toward him. But yesterday I was the same person. Same job, same brother, same debts. Tonight she looked at me differently because she thought a wealthy attorney wanted me. Mason said nothing. That feels terrible. After a moment, he replied, Then perhaps we solved the wrong problem. Maya looked at him. For all his confidence, Mason seemed uncertain. And that uncertainty made him feel more human than anything he had done all weekend. Outside Maya's apartment, Mason turned off the engine. The silence between them felt heavier than the one they had shared before the wedding. We still have the financial part of our agreement, he said. Tomorrow. Maya, please. He stopped. I know what we agreed, but right now I don't want this weekend to end with a bank transfer. Mason studied her. All right. She exhaled. I also don't believe boredom was the real reason you did this. He looked forward through the windshield. Maya waited. Eventually he spoke. My entire life is transactional. That sounds lonely. It is efficient. That wasn't what I said. Mason almost smiled. Then his expression became serious. People bring me problems because they expect money to solve them. When I overheard you, I could have paid for a professional actor. I could have introduced you to someone. Instead, I wanted to participate. Why? Because you needed someone, not something. Maya felt her throat tighten. For a weekend, Mason continued, I was useful without being a bank account. She nodded slowly. Thank you for being useful. You're welcome. He reached into his pocket and gave her a card containing only his name and private number. We need a believable breakup eventually. Maya laughed. Of course you've already planned our breakup. We cannot leave loose ends. Maybe in a month we decide you became obsessed with buying a house. And you objected to marble floors. I hate marble floors. Perfect. The following evening they met again, this time at a park overlooking Lake Washington. Mason arrived without a suit, as requested. Maya almost failed to recognize how much younger he looked in a simple sweater. They discussed the fake breakup for perhaps 15 minutes. Then they talked for almost 2 hours about everything else. Maya described working extra shifts to support her younger brother. Mason admitted that he collected rare books he rarely opened. That is incredibly stupid, she told him. Finally, an honest review. He laughed. Before they parted, Mason offered something unexpected. My fund has a problem. Lack of money? Lack of reality. She stared. He explained that his teams created presentations filled with language no ordinary person would willingly read. I want you to review them. I'm a waitress. Exactly. That is not a qualification. It might be the best one available. He proposed meeting once each week. She would tell him which ideas sounded clear, arrogant, pointless, or disconnected from ordinary people. He would compensate her fairly. No pretending? No pretending. No fake relationship? Strictly professional. Maya extended her hand. Deal. Their weekly meetings became unexpectedly important. Maya still worked at Linden & Pine, but she stopped accepting every double shift. She paid overdue bills and arranged better tutoring for her brother. Every Wednesday evening, she entered Mason's world and criticized it. This presentation is awful. Why? Because nobody speaks like this. That sentence came from our communications director. Your communications director needs friends outside finance. Mason laughed and rewrote it. The strange arrangement gradually became friendship. Maya learned that Mason hated formal dinners, but attended them anyway. Mason learned that Maya's greatest fear was not poverty itself, but spending so many years surviving that she forgot how to live. Eventually, they executed their fictional breakup. Maya told Judith that Mason wanted to move too quickly and had become unreasonable about designing their imaginary house. Judith was disappointed. But for the first time, Maya refused to apologize for being single. I would rather be alone than choose someone because everyone expects me to. Judith fell silent. Then, unexpectedly, she nodded. Maybe I pushed too hard. It was the closest thing to an apology Maya had ever received from her. Their lie had begun, because Maya wanted Judith's approval. Yet ending it taught her that she no longer required it. Several weeks later, Mason stood beside his apartment window before their usual meeting. When Maya entered, she knew instantly something was wrong. You're wearing the armor again. He looked down at his suit. I have to leave. Her smile disappeared. For how long? My fund is completing a major international acquisition. I have to relocate to Zurich for at least a year. Maya's stomach tightened. When? Tomorrow. She stared at him. You planned markets across continents, but you waited until the day before leaving to tell me? I didn't know how. That confession hurt more than an excuse would have. For once, Mason Reed had encountered a problem he could not solve with preparation. Mason handed Maya an envelope. She immediately shook her head. No. Open it. Inside were documents covering her brother's educational expenses and the deposit for a better apartment closer to work. Mason, this is too much. It isn't charity. That is what rich people say when they give people enormous amounts of money. Then call it an investment. In what? Your stability. She looked up. He was trying to sound businesslike because business language protected him from saying goodbye. Maya finally understood that. I'll accept help from my brother, she said, but I'm not becoming one of your projects. You never were. Their eyes met. The room seemed painfully quiet. Maya stepped forward and hugged him. For once, there was no rehearsed gesture, no ant watching, no agreement defining how long contact should last. Goodbye, Mason. Goodbye, Maya. After he left for Switzerland, life became quieter. Maya moved into a small apartment she could maintain herself. Her brother improved at school. She kept working at Linden and Pine because she liked the familiar rhythm, but she no longer lived in constant fear of the next bill. Every morning, Noah placed an excellent espresso beside her. Anonymous customer, he always claimed. Maya eventually stopped asking questions. Months passed. She sent Mason occasional emails about her brother and her work. His replies were brief. Keep building something that belongs to you. Stay practical. Don't let Noah choose presentation fonts. She saved every message. Judith gradually stopped asking when Maya would marry. Zoe, however, became Judith's new obsession after catching Catherine's bouquet, which created endless amusement for everyone except Zoe. Noah began taking evening classes in hospitality management. Maya helped him study accounting because, after months around Mason, balance sheets no longer looked entirely foreign. A new co-worker named Grace joined the cafe and encouraged Maya to apply for a supervisory role. You already run this place whenever the manager disappears, Grace said. Maya hesitated. The old version of herself would have worried she lacked qualifications. The new one applied. She got the position. Almost a year after Mason's departure, on a mild spring morning, Maya was wiping the counter when Noah brought her espresso unusually late. You're slipping, she said. Supplier issue. You are the supplier. Noah suddenly became extremely interested in the espresso machine. The front door opened. Maya looked up. Mason stood there. No tie. Light jacket. Same calm expression. Different eyes. For several seconds neither moved. Then he walked toward the counter. Good morning, Maya. Her hands tightened around the cloth. You're back. Zurich survived. And your fund? Stable. Congratulations. There's still one unresolved matter. She raised an eyebrow. Mason rested his hands on the counter where their ridiculous agreement had begun. I spent almost a year surrounded by perfectly organized people, perfectly scheduled meetings, and perfectly predictable decisions. That sounds like your dream. I thought so. He looked at her. It was unbearable. Maya tried not to smile. I discovered something. What? Stability has very little value if there's nobody around who is willing to disturb it. Behind him, Noah silently disappeared into the kitchen. Mason continued. I missed Wednesday evenings. I missed being told my ideas were terrible. I missed someone who cared more about whether her brother passed mathematics than whether markets rose. Mason, no contract this time. No fake biography? No. No imaginary house? Absolutely not. You have terrible opinions about flooring. She laughed. He nodded toward her coffee. And I assume the anonymous espresso has been satisfactory. Maya stared at him. You? I wanted one small thing in your life to remain predictable. She looked toward the kitchen. Noah. No response. Mason smiled. He maintained confidentiality admirably. Maya looked back at him, eyes bright. What happens now? He gestured toward his old corner table. I order an espresso. And? You finish your shift. And then? Then we have coffee, as two people who no longer need a story prepared in advance. Maya considered him. That sounds dangerously unplanned. I'm trying something new. She poured his espresso herself. Mason returned to his old corner table. But neither of them returned to the people they had been before that strange weekend. They did not rush into promises. Maya had learned what happened when other people's expectations dictated the shape of her life, and Mason had spent too many years treating uncertainty as something to eliminate. They decided that whatever grew between them would grow without scripts, performance, or deadlines. Judith found out that Mason had returned within days. Naturally. Her first call began exactly as Maya expected. So, are you two together again? Maya smiled. We're spending time together. What does that mean? It means exactly that. And marriage? Aunt Judith. Judith sighed. All right, I'm learning. That sentence meant more than Maya expected. Mason resumed their Wednesday meetings, although Maya no longer worked for him merely as a reality consultant. She began taking business courses in the evenings, partly because she discovered that understanding money gave her choices she had never possessed before. Mason encouraged her but stopped trying to solve every difficulty himself. When Maya struggled with an assignment, he offered advice rather than hiring someone to finish it. When her brother needed help, Mason asked before intervening. When Mason buried himself in work, Maya reminded him that efficiency was not the same as living. Noah eventually became assistant manager at Linden and Pine. Grace took over many of Maya's old shifts. Zoe started dating someone she met completely without Judith's involvement, which Judith regarded as suspicious but tolerated. One quiet evening, nearly 2 years after the wedding that started everything, Maya and Mason drove through the countryside outside Seattle. They passed vineyards and wedding venues glowing beneath strings of lights. Maya looked through the window. Funny. What? I once thought arriving at a wedding with the right man would prove my life was successful. Mason nodded. And now? Now I think success is being able to arrive alone without feeling ashamed. He smiled. That sounds expensive. It cost me an unreasonable amount of emotional chaos. Then the return was excellent. Maya laughed. She had once believed stability meant having enough money, a respectable partner, a house, and relatives who stopped asking questions. Mason had believed stability meant controlling every variable, until nothing could surprise him. Both had been wrong. As people grew older, Maya realized life rarely became simpler. Parents aged, work changed, friendships thinned or deepened, bodies grew tired, savings mattered. Bills remained real, love could disappear despite good intentions, and opportunity sometimes arrived disguised as inconvenience. There was wisdom in preparing for tomorrow, but preparation alone could not create a meaningful life. Security mattered, because fear exhausted people. Money could buy medicine, education, shelter, time, and choices. Maya would never pretend otherwise. Poverty was not noble, and struggle was not automatically character-building. She was grateful for every practical door Mason's help had opened. But the deepest change had not come from his money. It came from being taken seriously. One person had looked at a problem that embarrassed her and treated it as worthy of attention. That gave her enough breathing room to begin treating herself the same way. Mason learned something similar. A large bank account had protected him from countless inconveniences, yet it had also allowed him to avoid dependence, vulnerability, and surprise. Maya reminded him that being needed was different from being useful, and being admired was different from being known. They both discovered that dignity grows when help is offered without ownership and accepted without surrender. Perhaps that was what maturity eventually asked of everyone, to stop measuring a good life by appearances and begin measuring it by truth, not whether relatives approved, not whether strangers envied you, not whether every plan succeeded, but whether the people beside you could see who you truly were and remain there without requiring you to perform. Maya rested her head against the seat and watched the vineyard lights disappear behind them. Years earlier, she had needed a boyfriend by tomorrow. What she had actually needed was permission to stop building her life around other people's expectations. Mason had believed he was rescuing her from one uncomfortable wedding. Instead, they had rescued each other from lives that looked stable from the outside, but had forgotten how to feel real. And this time, there was no contract telling them what happened next.